That overhead of the bottle, it's almost like the diameter of the opening was perfectly milled to fit the probe. It was like the most seamless, perfect fit. There was not like a millimeter on either side. It was crazy.
I don't know if you've noticed, but what's up with the cinematography in commercials today being so darn immersive? In your face, captivating, with wild transitions and shots that defy the laws of physics. Well, today's guest is director Jackson Tisi, who's famous for creating in this way.
I think because of the short attention spans and the increasingly shorter, more bite-sized deliverables that come with each campaign, it's just a really natural thing to lean on to keep people engaged. Like, it's very effective.
In this episode, we talk about the use of a director's cut, working with your friends, and how his role as a director fits into the big picture.
I'm happy if the brand's happy and their ad is successful. It's just you're a part in a larger machine and you're an important part, but there's a part of this job that's customer service as well, in like the most honorable way. Like, I love it. You're selling like luxury goods. Like, these people spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to make spots, and I think we can get pretty carried away where it's like feels like very much about us.
We get behind the scenes with Jackson and break down his recent commercial for Remy Martin. And for the first time on this show, we pick apart the unique treatment that won him the job.
I feel like if you take pride in the final product, you have to take pride in every step of that process to get there. And making treatments is something that you have to really care about. And the ones, truthfully, where I haven't, or I've only done it because I'm like, I should do it for the money or whatever, I don't win those. I think passion is one of those things that it's unfakeable.
Jackson Tisi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
So I've been wanting to talk to a commercial director about this. And after studying your work a little bit, I think you may be a good one to cover it with. I want to talk about immersive, subjective, dynamic points of view. Like, not just the use of a wide-angle lens, but like scenes and shots where we're flying through the layers of each world or breaking the laws of physics. I absolutely love it. Where does that come from for you, and why do you think it's so popular today?
It's interesting that I feel like it's popular today because I think people have always wanted to do stuff like that. Like, you can see versions of it in old films, and I mean, there's even some crazy transitions in Citizen Kane, like there's some really immersive things that have been happening forever. I just think that technology has made it a lot more accessible and has become less of a limitation. But for me, I grew up skiing and doing action sports, and that's how I got into filmmaking, is by shooting skateboarding and skiing and all of that stuff. And so moving fast with a camera and telling a story with an immersive visual was like how I got into it. And it translates really nicely to commercials. I think it's funny because now I feel like I'm in a little bit of a headspace where I'm really trying to it has to be intentional, and I'm like really trying to pull back because so much of it feels like it can feel just like you're doing it for the sake of doing it, or but it's really nice for the I understand why it's popular for like the short attention spans that we all have now, and you need to make a 15-second ad. How do you keep someone's attention? Let's go crazy with it. So it's cool. It definitely has its place. But I definitely think that technology has made it more ubiquitous.
Yeah, no doubt. You and I could talk all night and day about the technicals, how the shots are pulled off, probe lenses, skater scopes. But first I want to talk about the conceptualization of those shots and transitions like that. Like, put me in your head when you're coming up with ideas like these.
Well, everything starts with, like in a commercial, everything starts with the agency brief. So you get the deck, essentially, that the agency's been working on for months at that point. And you have to digest that. And then I hop on a call with them and talk about what they need in this campaign and what they feel like's missing and where I can kind of come in and help. And then I just build on top of that. And so, a lot of the times they'll put some ideas in the deck that are coming from a marketing perspective and not necessarily like a tactical filmmaking perspective. And then it's my job to kind of bridge that gap and make that really tangible and put together a plan of action. So with, it's different every time. If it was like this formulaic thing, I feel like I'd be able to crank out a lot more treatments, but I definitely like just take my time. I try to treat each project like it's its own thing. Like I just did a job where there was only one transition in the spot, and it was a lighting gag. It wasn't even something the camera actually did. And I really liked that, and it fit really well for what they were doing. And it was great. And then the next spot I did had a bunch of transitions going through walls. But that worked well for that spot. So I'm pretty, I feel like I have a very, wide ranging body of work in terms of like the styles that I play around with. But a lot of that comes from, I approach each project thinking about what's best for this, not how do I project myself onto this. It's what does this need?
Yeah. That is one thing I noticed as well, is that there's a lot of variety in your work. There's definitely range in style and genre. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe it's subconscious, but I just don't want to get bored. I think there's subtle things that are very like make a spot me, but I'm never really trying to think about what's my like gimmick or what's my trademark or what's my thing. Like that doesn't really appeal to me, especially with like longevity. Like I don't want to be I want to be known and like people to see the work and be like, oh, that quality or that style, or there's something there that reminds me of that, but it's not like too much of a signature kind of thing, because it should come down to each project and the storytelling in each one. I'd rather be more of a conductor or curator than really putting my signature on every shot. I also just like playing too much. I feel like if I tried to come up with a signature thing years ago, the thing that I like today, I would have never discovered, because I would have just been like, this is the thing that I do on every job, and that's what it is. There's so much that I've learned to love through not tying myself to something that worked once.
Yeah, I think that's admirable. I think it's a really great way to go about it. Do you think that there's like this inevitable involuntary thing about creating, where it's like whether you try for it or don't try for it, some of those things will show up in your work?
No, of course. I mean, where the conversation started with transitions, I think because of the short attention spans and the increasingly shorter, more bite-sized deliverables that come with each campaign, it's just a really natural thing to lean on to keep people engaged. Like it's very effective. I think that we're hopefully going to tilt into seeing more just like restrained storytelling as well, like kind of balance that out. But I think that the market can often just determine what's going on. And I think it's good. I think it's good for like filmmakers to be adaptable, like I started in documentary and narrative and just telling story and like being super grounded with the work and making stuff with minimal camera tricks and technology, like lower budgets, just really raw filmmaking. And I love that. But it's really good to know the technical side of it too. And so I viewed a lot of the commercial work as like a way to learn and get good at technical filmmaking and craft. And a lot of this VFX work or motion control or all of this stuff, it's just more tools for us to kind of become aware of as we kind of move forward into other projects. But I really feel like the market definitely dictates what it is. Like right now, we want to see a lot of crazy, zany, immersive transitions. I don't know what's happening 10 years from now, but I'm sure it'll keep keep evolving, and the people that can keep up will keep up. That'll be what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, speaking of the technicals, when you're envisioning shots like camera moves through the keyhole of a door and crosses through workout equipment, are you wondering how you're going to pull that off? Or are you saving that for later when it comes down time to actually do it?
I think there's still moments, like it depends on the job, but there's still moments like this where I have an idea for something and I call a few friends before I write it into a treatment, or I talk to my producer, or I call someone who might know how to do something like that just to get advice. But for like that in particular, one that you're referencing, that was the agency brief needed us to feel fluid and make it feel like there was a wide range of things in this gym that a customer could use, from a spin room to weight racks to like it was the client need to see it all compressed into one space. And so the way that I just wrote it is we're going to use a bolt, and we're going to do 3 separate bolt moves, but we're going to program it so that in post, it can feel all like one. Like our out points and the exact camera angle and exact positioning on our 2 of our first shot was our 1 of the next shot. And then you just use a tiny bit of VFX to do the actual seam of moving through the keyhole or moving through the hole punch on the weight rack. And those things there's some things that VFX will always have to take over a little bit, but I really like to try to get as close as possible. In camera. I like to be able to, like, when I get into my edit, see it as like 90% of what it is. And then VFX is the stuff that we couldn't do,
Yeah. Now, who are you relying on most when it comes to pulling those shots off?
I mean, with that one, it's funny. We were relying on the power grid. We had like a bunch of different power surges that kept messing up our bolt on that, just because of the area we were shooting in Toronto was, I guess, having rolling blackouts. But on a more serious kind of answer to that, I feel like you're always relying a lot on your DP, because I have these ideas. I know how they need to be done, and then I bring in people I trust to like really make sure that they're done correctly. And I've gotten to work with some amazing DPs over the years, and I lean pretty heavily on them to bring that to life so that I can focus on all the other things, and know that that's in good hands. But yeah, 100% my cinematographers will really, especially with the technical stuff, they'll handle a lot of it.
Yeah, I think you and I both know the importance of collaboration on set. This is absolutely a team sport. Has it always been a team sport for you?
Yeah, it's kind of what made me want to do this. I was when I was skiing, it was nice. It taught me a lot about accountability. Like, if you fall in competition, you can't really blame anyone else. It's pretty on you.
Right.
But then there's something even more beautiful about winning or losing as a group and as a team. And I learned to really love that. So it's like, I feel like I still have that accountability from doing solo sports, but what really drew me to filmmaking was the sense of community, or the sense of collaboration, or getting to meet all these different people. And just, it feels so, it's amazing. These sets you meet so many new people. You get to go to some pretty cool places, and it's an absolute blessing. I really love what, I get to do, and community is definitely the most important part of it. I feel like this job can get lonely if you don't have that. Like, you spend a lot of time traveling and in hotels and away from home, and that's tough if you don't have, like, the cinematographers I shoot with, they're all my friends. Like, or, they've all become my friends at a certain point. So that's just been an important kind of marker for me.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast episode with us if we didn't break down a piece of work.
Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, give me a little context here on this project.
So I had done a project a few years prior for Remy, and that project was a little more docu-style, and it was more or less a portrait on a really great artist named Black. He's the guy that spells his name with a six instead of a B, but he's great, and we did that first job with them. The agency is awesome. They're Fred and Farid, and I hadn't thought about it in a second, but then they came back around, and the creative director, this guy named Laurent, was just awesome to work with the first time. And when this came about, it came about as originally they needed 16 different social deliverables. This wasn't even supposed to be a TV or like
Really?
larger cut. And I just, the creative that Laurent always brings forward is always sick, and he just gives you license to create. And he really trusts people. So I'm always down to jump in. And I knew that if I jumped into this, I could take all these different pieces. And if I was smart about how I crafted those, I could weave it into something that felt like one long piece, that felt cohesive. So that's kind of how this came about. I pitched it. We won the job, and then we went and shot in Toronto. And so that's why it's so packed with so much variety, is because they have all these different deliverables that they need to hit. And then there's me trying to make sure that they all speak to each other too, and kind of flow throughout the whole spot. It feels like one crazy night out with a group of friends, as opposed to 16 entirely disconnected vignettes, which I really like. So there was a lot of footage and even some scenes left out of this version of the cut. But this 60 felt like the cleanest kind of actualization of what I was going for when we were going through it. We had a 90, but I felt like the 90 kind of felt like it was dragging a little bit. So this is the one that felt strongest.
Yeah, I think 60 is perfect length for what I'm seeing here. You know, is
Yeah.
60, how did the client feel about the length? 60 seconds, is that long or these days or
Well,
no?
they weren't buying it initially. So that's the thing, is when you just deliver the whatever 16 different 10-second deliverables that they asked for. This is just bonus, right? This is just director's cut. So send it
Gotcha.
to Laurent after you liked it. That's it. It's nice. It's not like this thing that I'm the way I do director's cuts is I'm as involved with agency and client cuts and the edit the whole way through on their end, and then I just do my thing on my end, as opposed to creating friction in the edit suite. And then everyone appreciates, I think, more cuts. So you get this extra bonus cut of, because my director's cuts are always pretty close to what I pitched.
Yeah.
So I just like seeing it actualized.
Yeah, and actually, let's talk about the director's cut a little bit, because I don't understand as well as I think that I could. When I see director's cut, to me, the limited experience that I've had, I think, oh man, there was a disagreement there between the filmmakers, or the filmmaker, the director, and the powers that be, the people paying for it, the client, the agency. Is that always the case, or are you like negotiating up front? Hey, I'll do this project, but I need to actualize it in my own way at the end with a director's cut. How does it work?
Sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes it's like a one-shot difference. Sometimes, like, I think disagreement's too strong of a word. There's no world in which our contracts or our bidding process has anything about a director's cut in it. Like, the clients don't care about that, but no one's stopping you from doing it. So you just make it. I think there's certain brands, like if you did an Apple spot, there's likely no director's cuts on Apple spots. Some are higher security than others. But with these, it's, I think it's just a way to kind of, I get to work with editors that I'm close with all the time. Like my friend Nick cut this. And we just always cut our version. Usually the director's cut is I get a week with the editor or a few days with the editor before the agency comes in so I can get my thoughts together and get the piece together. Usually the director's cut's what's made that week. And so what we cut that week is, I hand off to the agency like, hey, this was the vision. This is where we're at with it. I'm around for all the edits if you want me to be. But here you have the actualized thing of what I pitched and all of that. And then usually, because there's so many different stakeholders in any given brand, things change and people get into it and, oh, that product shot should be like this, or we need to actually spend more time on the end card and that scene isn't testing well, or just so many things can happen that aren't that are logical decisions but are not creative decisions. And I think if the real purpose of a director's cut is those things really always matter to the brand. Like, I really respect that the cuts are different. Like, it's not like I'm arm wrestling to try to get my way on the TV spot. Like, the brand, I'm happy if the brand's happy and their ad is successful and it's doing well. But I think the importance of a director's cut is having something that fits your vision as a filmmaker, so that it's like a business card. Like, people come to me for the spots that they see are the director's cuts. They're not the safer, a little like more watered down corporate versions of them. They have a little, because that's just what it is. So I think it's good to make your business card, and it's good to also service theirs and try to learn to not create a friction between the two, because there doesn't really need to be.
Yeah, man, that's so powerful, because I know what it's like to be a director with a vision, be working on the thing, and in my head, only one version of it can exist. And if it's not exactly what I envisioned, plus all of what client wants, then for some reason, it's doing a disservice to what I envisioned. Like you said, friction, and it can get out of hand. And I think having a director's cut, it seems to really alleviate that and allow you to make everyone happy.
Yeah, and we're talking about what it's like to collaborate, and it's like that's part of it. Like, if it's a team sport and there's that many people involved, then I learned pretty early you can't be so precious about what gets put out there with this version of it or whatever. You can only control what your output is and what you share and publish, or whatever it is. So it's just you're a part in a larger machine, and you're an important part. But it's sometimes the most I can do is consult and guide, and I can't really dictate. If a client wants to do something differently, then that's I'm there in service of that. It's kind of, there's a part of this job that's customer service as well. Like, sure. in like the most honorable way. Like, I love it. It's like you're selling like luxury goods. Like, these people spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to make spots, and you're there to make sure that they're happy and pleased with what you're making. It's not, I think we can get pretty carried away where it's like, feels like very much about us. But I've learned that the easiest way for me to do it is to make sure I'm getting what they need first. And then they usually are cool with me getting what I want as well, because then it's bonus, it's extra. And my team is always really supportive of me doing my cut, my version, getting a little extra VFX support or whatever we need to kind of finish there. But yeah, no, it's just part of it. I feel like it's like industry standard. I don't know a single director that doesn't do director's cuts, to be honest.
Yeah. Sage advice there, Jackson. I want to bounce back into the piece. Just watching this right now. You said it's a 2-day shoot. Can you just tell me, like, what's something about this whole shoot that made it what it is? Like, if we had not had that, it wouldn't be what it is.
I think this is one of those shoots where every part of it, like really every part of it, to me was something that it kind of needed. We pushed really hard. Noelle, my amazing production designer, built that. I really wanted a separation. We had to have this dining room scene, and I really didn't want it to feel like any other location. So this was actually built we were at this, actually the castle where they shot X-Men in Toronto. Cool. Yeah, we were at that place. That's the opening scene, is that like crazy library looking room is there. This is it's like a venue that does weddings and stuff too.
Okay.
But we built that dining room in a tent that's like an outdoor event tent outside, and we were able to walk back and forth between the two sets while they were being built, because one was more about minimalism and about negative space, and the other was about building this set. So the set you're seeing here, the way that was talking to Noelle about it is I want something that feels like kind of James Bond, pretty modern, but also timeless. Like this could also be something in ancient Japan, and I loved that. So we were talking about a lot of like so we were talking about like a lot of Scandinavian and Japanese like architecture references, and down to like what the chairs look like and the furniture in the room. And then we peeled in our first version of this, when we designed it on the day, we had these planters and these sets in different corners, and I just got rid of them when I got there because it's like it's too busy. Yeah. So it's always this balance of how much are you doing. But one thing that was really important to us is the ability to light it, and you'll see that there's you're able to shoot full 360 in this space, and it's because the walls are translucent and the top of the ceiling is actually just a softbox. And so we're lighting it from through the walls with diffusion and ambience. And the reflective floor is beautiful. But Noelle just did such a great job. That's one of those things where if we didn't have her on this project, I don't know. It was really special that she figured out how to do this, because my expectations were here and our budget was here. She really made it happen, and the ability to kind of make one location feel like two locations is an art form in itself. It's really hard to do. She just crushed it. But I think our locations, and like we struggled to get that castle to shoot in. And I think if we didn't have that, our opening scene wouldn't feel as big. Like a location really does so much for you. And there's plenty of projects I've done where for one reason or another, your vision can be here, it can be great, but you get forced into a bad location. Like that's it, like then it's just permanently at that level. But I think for this spot, our locations did a lot of the heavy lifting and really made it beautiful. And I fought hard for kind of each aspect of this. But I mean, there were even little things like, I like to have my departments really like mingle, and like there's stuff that my gaffer was working on with, and my electric team was working on with Noelle as they were building stuff like that light box under his feet, and like some stuff that would have lights in the builds and designs. And another example of this would be my stylist, Priya. She was, we were talking about that transition, which actually has no VFX on it. That's straight, just,
really? Yeah.
In camera as we push through the shirt. This one where I needed a shirt that felt like it had that sort of vertical lines, like that kind of textured pattern. So, and it helps to sell through to clients too, when you're like, this is shirt for this reason, because it's very, intentional, and you're not just picking shirts for whatever reason. It's like, this one needs to be this way because it matches the curtains in the entranceway. So they were communicating in how to find the best ones for that. But that's literally like, they did it so well that I didn't even need to do anything to it. It was perfect in the cut. It just worked.
Yeah. That's wow. What a value add there. So you premeditated that the vertical lines on his shirt would help you with your transition moment?
Oh, of course.
That's cool. That's thorough, my friend. That's thorough.
I mean, it's the fun stuff. I might have that I don't think was in the treatment, but it's stuff like that I think that the treatment's the first stage, and then if we've done it right, we've thought about new stuff as we're in the process. Like if you're at dinner with your team, something can like come up, and that's an idea, and you should pivot on that. It's hard with filmmaking sometimes when stuff gets so sold through that it's hard to go to a client and be like, hey, so we're changing this, or we should change this, or we should think about this, because there's so many levels to it. But I do think that that's where some of the best stuff happens, is when you're actually like sleeves rolled up in the project. yeah, stuff just comes to light, and you're like, wait, we should do something with this shirt. That one was, again, this creative director and this team. I love working like that. They're so great. They see a good idea. It doesn't matter if it came before the pitch or after the pitch. Whatever is best for the spot. It doesn't matter if it came from me or if it came from an account person or whatever. Like I think just my philosophy is whatever ideas are best should be brought to the top. But yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. This shot in particular, I've seen this kind of thing done before. I think we all have, but the delivery of it is done so well. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I would love to just shout out the bar countertop here that Noelle built as well. And we're using all these light boxes, but it's really helpful for me because I don't know if you've ever shot alcohol before, but it's very hard to light. Like it can get very tricky to light. But suddenly if you put the light source under the alcohol, it's just suddenly it doesn't feel like this, like if that was on a solid table, it would feel like such a darker, less full-bodied liquid. But you put a light under it and it comes to life. So I had them replace all the bar countertops with soft boxes and stuff like that because it just allows me to, like, the reason that bottle looks so good is not because I had 20 lights around it, but it's because I had one light under it. And that's how I prefer to light a lot of alcohol because it allows me to move faster, and then it also just looks cool. It's like practical and in scene. What I did on this is I had the dolly, and you'll see in the BTS, so you'll be able to use this, but I had dolly track along the edge of this bar, and I had my camera pointed at the glass, and then from the camera, I had a glass rod that was attached to the glass of alcohol on the counter. And as the dolly moved down the track, the glass rod pushed, so we stayed together. So we pushed physically. Again, a practical trick, but in this shot, it's just a bit of cleanup to get rid of the glass rod that was attached to the left side of that glass there. It's basically a rod going from camera to that. It's like a double dolly kind of effect that you're getting.
That's cool.
You can kind of see it. I don't want to, it's the only VFX part that kind of bugs me out. It feels like AI, but it's not. It's just hard with hands. But at the very start of that, you can see his fingers kind of get a little fucked up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the cleanup from the glass rod there. But you can choose whether to put that in or not. But that's the only scar in the whole spot that bothers me.
This is so fascinating. It's a scar invisible to everyone, but you guys who made it, trust me. But it's so well done. You mentioned something I actually want to dig into for a second. Something I noticed. There's overall in your work, there seems to be like this glowing or illuminating feeling to your images. Whether it's like practical is in the frame, contrast is high, edges are defined. Like even just in this Remy piece, we've got, the platform he's sitting on isn't like made of wood. It's glowing. The bar tops that you're putting alcohol on, those are glowing. But I think if you look at your work as a whole, you'll notice that like things kind of just glow. Is that intentional?
This is the first time someone's brought that up to me. So no, but as you scrub through it, it definitely does glow. I don't know. I think it just adds. This is what I was talking about, where it's like, like there's filmmakers who are like, this is my style, this is what I do on every job. And like for me, I like to not think about that, but I do think that there's organic things that I like or appreciate, or just things that come to surface. I'm sure you could probably draw a lot of parallels to other work where like I have similar sense of like design for like, oh, this is the furniture I want in this space, right? There's small things like that just feel like my choices that aren't too overcalculated. But as you scrub through that, yeah, I've built a lot of interesting light images over the years.
Yeah. I'm just always so fascinated about what those subconscious things are, and not that we need to like figure them out or control them, but I'm just fascinated by the notion that maybe we don't have as much control over where we create as we think.
No, I kind of love that. That's something that might be a motif of mine that I haven't really processed as something I do a lot. But like you scrub back to like the Leon Bridges piece and the JBL piece and all those other pieces, it's like, no, it's all there. Same with this performance piece in No Mas, and yeah, it's just again, and there's tangible elements to it too that are very helpful. Obviously, like there's things look nicer. The DPs like it. It helps with the lighting, but I just love how practical it feels. It really brings the image to life, and to me, it provides a sense of contrast. Like that room at the beginning of Remy, it's so nice when you appreciate the gold and the amber tones when the whole image doesn't feel washed in yellow. Like when you have this like pure white point, which is what I try to do in a lot of my images, especially when we're in the color grade, is I try to have a purity of the white point and the black point. It's not too polluted, but just at least at some point in the frame, you can pick out a white point that's pure, a black point that's pure.
Wow.
And it helps with the dynamic range. It helps the image feel more rich. And I oscillate between wanting it to feel that inky or wanting it to feel a little more organic and natural, like you'll see in like my documentary work and stuff like that. Like, I kind of go back, and it depends on what format you're shooting on. Like if we shoot something on 35, it'll have obviously a different feel than something on digital. But I do really like trying to get that range of color in a spot. Like that's a warm final image, but it has a lot of blue in it.
Yeah. Yeah, contrast you're very good at it. Anything else about this piece before we dive into the treatment?
You asked about things we were lucky with. There was, and I feel like people overuse this lens with the probe lens nowadays. Like people are overusing it. I think it's an amazing piece of equipment. I'm guilty of overusing it at times, but it's amazing for things that I'm really trying to only use it now on things that no other lens can do. And this is a shot that no other lens could do. And it was pretty trippy how this bottle, the opening of this bottle was, you'll see, I'll send you a video of the probe diving into it, but that overhead of the bottle, it's almost like the diameter of the opening was perfectly milled to fit the probe. Like there was it was like the most seamless, perfect fit. There was not like a millimeter on either side that would have worked. It was crazy. And it was our martini. It was our last shot. We did this at the end, and the whole crew was like dead silent while we watched this lens lower into it. And it just made the most satisfying little like plink sound. And it was trippy. It was crazy to see it. And it just shows you a perspective that you couldn't see otherwise. Like, I was on a set recently working with the same DP and Saul, and we were doing a close-up on eyes. And I feel like that's a close-up I would have done 2 years ago. I immediately on the probe. But we were doing that on like a beautiful 50 macro, and that was right for that. But then we did a shot inside of a clock, and in order to get there, we needed to be on the probe. So it's nice. I mean, I don't think there's any rules to this sort of thing, but my new challenge for myself is to only use the probe when nothing else can do what the probe does. It's like specialty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed that you use the probe a good bit throughout your work, and I think that's like, it's such a wonderful device to be used to be able to like go through things and in certain ways, and it's such a beautiful tool.
You see it where we have to use it too. Like it's like these things I can't do without it. It wouldn't feel the same. It wouldn't be that way.
Well, let's dive into the treatment a little bit.
Treatments are funny because they're these little works of art all on their own, and it's like, I've had people send me treatments where there's a ton of my work referenced in it. But it's a little vulnerable to share treatments because, I mean, we all do it, but we all have to pull from all these places on the internet. And truthfully, I can't even tell you that we're so far away from this spot now, but I work with a treatment designer on all this work. And I don't know where they always pull their images, but if anyone's watching this and they see their work in there, just shout out.
Yeah, it is a super vulnerable thing to do, is to share treatments. This is actually our first time breaking apart a treatment on the podcast. So I
Cool.
appreciate you allowing yourself to be vulnerable in this way.
Yeah, and it's funny because like everyone does it. Like everyone, everyone has to. Oh, you want to sell something? Let's go find a reference for that. Let's push that. Like let's find that, and it's on you to make it your own. But um, yeah, it's kind of it's an art. It's like this amazing collage that happens. It's pretty cool.
All right, so Jackson, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen a treatment quite like this. Like, this isn't a 10-page PDF document with a synopsis and visual references. This is something else. Uh, I want to get into your methodology behind its structure, its voice, and its story. But before that, real quick, do you know anything about how like it was designed?
Yeah, I do all my own writing for these. So I start writing. I start my process with treatments is I open a Google Doc or I create a folder in my Google Drive and I do a one document that called copy and I write out all my copy and I use bold headlines to delineate this page, this page, this page. And I work on that and it's a lot of writing that ends up happening. And then as I do that, I have another document called references and I will go and pull stuff from cataloged Instagram saved folders, old Vimeo videos, print advertisements, old spots I know of. I pull from movies a lot. I don't think there's too many movies in here, but I pull from movies on a lot of other decks when it's applicable. So
Sure.
you start to pull all these references together, whether it's scenes off of YouTube from something, but you start pulling them together and I then hand it off to a treatment designer. Someone like who's really good at InDesign, but not just technical. The treatment designers I work with are really like their fingers on the pulse with what's going on in the culture and what's new, but also has in-depth knowledge of, where these ideas have come from in films and movies. And they take these tools or these building blocks that I've given them and they start to lay it out in InDesign. Sometimes they follow the references that we have there. I just do that so that they have a jumping off point and they can kind of see where I'm going with it. And I'll be super specific. I'll be like, GIF this moment from 313 to 327. Like I will, as I put my references in, I'll time code them. I'll be like, here's the moment I want from this. So they're not just like hunting through a 5-minute scene of a movie on YouTube. But then they run with it and they add all their own stuff, like and they bring themselves to the table. And then we do. I'm not the easiest guy to work with treatments because I need it to be just so right for me to get there. But I take a lot of pride in this, and but the people I work with seem to feel the same way and push it really hard. But yeah, I think I have at least 2-3 rounds of back and forth to get it to the right place. And every single one of my treatments hits a different page count. I've had treatments exceed 100 pages before. And then the most recent one I did was like sub 30. It's really about what does this project need? It's like the last project was one 30-second TV commercial. That was it. No extra anything. And so we pitched that and it was an interesting concept around there being the whole concept has no actors in it. It's like these empty rooms. So there was no wardrobe page, there's no casting page, there's no actors. Like it can get stripped back. And then, I've pitched on jobs where it's a whole campaign of 4 very different 30-second ads that all have different stories and different things. And I really try to break down our script section in a way where the GIF, it's less text per page. I'd rather have a script section that's 10 pages long and spread out with GIFs that kind of match each of those beats instead of cramming everything onto one page and making someone read the whole spot with one image behind it. Like I'd rather someone be able to click through it and kind of go on this ride. Yeah,
that was going to be my question. Do you have like a one-size-fits-all type structure that you build from? 44 slides. That seems like a lot to me, but like you said, it's the perfect amount. It's cool to know that you're not afraid to bulk it up a little bit. I noticed some of these slides are literally just like vibe pieces or a rolling GIF. And I think
Yeah.
like, so you're telling me you're not afraid to make it longer. That's something people can switch through quickly?
No, and it's I mean, they get watered down sometimes anyway when the agency needs to go show their client or whatnot, but I get onto my pitch call and then I have this kind of like wonderful moving digital art book basically that we've put together that should feel like an experience that imparts at least a little bit of the feeling of what watching the final product will be like. And I think that it's the same reason in a spot like this one in the final product, there's single frames of random shots that like you wouldn't know, but you feel. And it's like my version of that in this is there's one page with no text on it, but it gives you an emotion that hopefully helps you carry yourself from, okay, I just digested a lot in this cinematography section. I'm about to go into wardrobe, but what's the little piece in between that kind of like gently holds my hand and gets me there? Some of it's just feeling right too. Like you can't over intellectualize it at all. You kind of just have to flow with it and then go big picture and trim what's not needed. But I feel like this treatment and all the others has the exact amount of pages it needs.
Yeah. When did you start using GIFs? I mean, almost every image in here is a moving image, and I love that. When did you start utilizing GIFs?
I have been using GIFs for years now. I don't know. As soon as I found out it was possible to do it, I did it. I remember I used to post my work on Instagram like 3-4 years ago with GIFs where I would just loop the video and do the thing. And that's become very popular now. It's like how everyone does their work, but there was always something a little limiting about just posting a still. I was like, this is a moving medium. I want to feel the motion. I want to feel the thing. And so in these spots, once I found out we can do this with treatments and InDesign, and you have this like website that you basically make with moving images, I was all about it. Something I've recently been doing to push it further is I've started putting sound in my treatments. I like basically score my treatments. You can attach sound to different pages and you can play and you can talk about sound design and then you can hit a button and you can give them that experience. But we're getting closer to just making the commercials before we get hired to make the commercials.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty wild. How do you feel about that?
It's cool. I even used it. I was pitching on a music video the other day, and there was a moment in the song where I wanted to hit like this intermission where it's like you cut the music out and there would be this scene with this wave that crashes. And on that page, I took the song, I cut the music out, and I had this big splash of a wave happen in between in this middle section, so you could like feel the intermission. I just think that these tools help you communicate. I really don't love confusion. I want no one to walk away from a pitch unsure of what was pitched. Like hyper detailed, tons of clarity. It's like it's a balance between giving them too much so it's overwhelming or not giving them enough so they don't see what it is. You know, that's the fine line.
Listening to you talk about building a really solid treatment is so similar to listening to anyone talk about any part of the process. You seem really stoked about doing a lot of work and building a pitch, something you might not even get.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, even just these opportunities, like, you know, to be in some of these rooms with competing against filmmakers I look up to and like have admired is just great, you know? So it's very much, yeah, I don't know. I love this job. I feel like there's a part of me outside of being a director that just loves the art of selling something. Like I love selling something. Like the sales and like that sort of thing is like definitely comes through in this work where it's like, oh, like how can I feel like if you take pride in the final product, you have to take pride in every step of that process to get there. And this is making treatments is something that you have to really care about. And the ones truthfully where I haven't, or I've only done it because I'm like, this is lame creative, but I should do it for the money or whatever. I don't win those. I almost always never win the things that I don't Yeah, like I think passion is one of those things that it's unfakeable.
That's amazing. I want to run through this treatment just and pick apart a few slides, like
Yep.
slide two, or really like you could look at it as the first slide past the cover. What's your goal here? I mean, it's the first thing people really see. What's your goal?
Well, it's funny. I do all this writing and I write in my style, like so that they can read this on their own and in their own time. But when I'm doing my pitch to them over Zoom with the screen shared and walking them through each page, I'm not reading the text until I get to the script section. I'm not reading off of my slides. I'm just freestyling. I'm just talking to them. I make the whole thing a conversation. This page is just about getting you into it. In this specific case, I'd worked with this agency and brand before. So, hi again, like, what's up? We've done this before, like little subtle things
Yeah.
because it's still competitive. Like, I could have still lost this job. It's no guarantee just because I've done past work that we'll get this one. But all honest stuff, but stuff to also just set the tone in a really positive place. Like, we made great work last time. Let's just do it again and let's get into it. Let's keep it brief.
That's great. I love it. A few slides in, you have like this character breakdown. And in the commercial, the characters, like there's no lines, but you've given all of them a backstory.
Yeah, I come from a place of I feel like I've been able to practice a lot of these really technical things, which are amazing, and I really love all that. But the thing that I love is, again, I started in short narrative docs, and narrative filmmaking is where I want to go with it. Trying to make a movie right now, like there's the obsession around like storytelling and character is something that is I love, and it can be an itch that doesn't always get scratched in commercials because it can always be so product focused. People can basically become props in commercials, and it can become very product focused, and there's no like casting on some of these like not this one. This one was great, but like some commercials, casting is like I'm watching a guy hold a phone. Like I could have done this over a phone. There's nothing to work on with them. Like there's nothing to dive in. And, I trained with actors at NYU and directing the actor and all this stuff. And I really, this might have not been necessary in this treatment, but I put it in every treatment because I want people to tap into the fact that we are telling stories here. And one thing that's helpful is like, it's the same thing with actors. It's like in order to be great in the scene that you're in, you need to know where you're coming from, and you need to understand it. You can't just be like, "I'm mad." It's like I'm mad because of X, Y, and Z, and this is my life, and I know, what color my car is, and all this stuff. You can give them all these details, and I think that honestly makes the storytelling and the world building a lot more rich in ways that even on something like this that doesn't necessarily doesn't have dialogue, doesn't have real character backstory development. But I think that me giving the agency client and actors this sense of these people are more than just vessels for a product makes the spot hopefully feel a little more grounded, and makes the people within the spot feel like they're coming from somewhere and they didn't just appear in a commercial. There's something genuine about it. So yeah, I just do it, but I also do it because I just love writing backstories. It's just fun. It's fun to provide color. It's like, oh, and he thought of this too. That's different.
Yeah. No, I think setting up backstories for characters at any level, it just trickles down. I mean, this is the ground floor for the entire thing. And I think it just trickles down and helps make more believable characters. And, with at any level that they're participating in.
Totally.
That's great, man. And you got a full story structure here, with scenes broken apart in different slides, it looks like.
Yeah, and this changed a lot because a lot of our vignettes after we won the job changed per client request. So a lot of the little things changed here, but in order to, and this is something Laurent and I had talked about on our first call, was instead of trying to package this as we know that this is 16 different deliverables or whatever it was some huge amount of different short 10-second things. instead of, breaking it down into each individual one, how do I write that into one cohesive story so everyone can then see the different pieces that kind of break apart? So that was something that was helpful, and why a DC even exists and why it all feels connected is because we started from this point of thinking about story structure. How do these pieces that don't necessarily care to be connected get connected? How is it part of a bigger unit? It's like world building.
Did you look at it as potentially taking a risk in how you formatted the treatment by doing it this way, as opposed to giving them very clear, obvious, different deliverables?
No, because I think I make it obvious at other points, and I made it really obvious in my pitch. And I think when you read it, you're like, okay, so there's this scene and this scene and this scene and this moment and this moment and this moment. But this was something I also asked the creative director. We were talking about it, and we thought this was the best way forward. So on the initial boards call, like I already had that question queued up, and I asked him. Then he's like, "This is the way you should totally go about it that way. That's kind of what we're looking for." The main thing is just asking permission on that one, and because the first call is always like kind of like a doctor's visit. You're just kind of checking in on what they need. And that was something where I was like, I don't want to miss the mark. So just give it to me honestly. I ask all my questions,
Yeah. A doctor's visit. That's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah. It's like the first call is okay, so what's going on? What are you feeling? What's wrong with this? Where are the problems? And then, you run your tests, you do your thing, and then you come back with your literal treatment for what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
What hurts? What do you think is wrong? What medicine can I give you?
I open up every first call with what hurts.
Hey, what hurts? How can I make it feel better?
Exactly.
Halfway through, you've got an additional thoughts slide where you give even more options and ideas. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's a fine line because when you're writing these things, you only got 2 days or how many days that you have, 4 days or whatever. And your resources are limited, but sometimes I put this in there as, hey, if you want to spend a little more and get an extra day, we could do all this extra stuff too, do this cool stuff. Or if you like this stuff more, sometimes this is here. Sometimes I just go laser focused and I'm like, this is what we're doing. This is what it is. We're locked in. With stuff that's more vignette based, it can really be helpful when someone's walking through a pitch. If they like 80% of the scenes, but one doesn't work, or it's not clicking for the right reason, or it doesn't check some box that they need to have checked for, like we need to do this for this time of year and it needs to have a Christmas tree in the back or whatever, we're missing something. The additional thoughts, like kind of vignettes, it's like, okay, if there's something missing, then they can come here and they'll be like, then when we do have our pitch call, it's something where, hey, these can come in. This is modular. We can get rid of the thing that's not serving the need and replace it with something that does serve the need, and hopefully that helps. So, and sometimes even if none of this gets picked or used, this is here as just hey, by the way, I'm thinking about this more than what the lines you gave me to color in on, there's certain things that I think help win jobs, and it's showing how passionate you are,
Yeah. Super big. When it comes time for you to cast a vision on your visuals, the aesthetic, you go as far as to even put the names of DPs that you've worked with in the past, editors that you've worked with in the past. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, like, I like to do it because I think, again, it's a team sport. And if you have an editor that you don't love on a project, or that you don't, two people can be great and they also might not be a great fit. And sometimes that just happens. And I feel like when you hire, and this doesn't always happen because so often agencies have an in-house person or they have their relationships, and it doesn't, you don't always get to curate your full team. But I think if you're hiring a director to make work for you, you need to realize that their work is not made. If you're hiring them for them, truly, their work is not made in a vacuum. And the reason their work feels that way is because a huge part of their job is curating their team. and you've hired that person. So trust that person to bring in all the people that make their work great. Whether it's the editor or the DP or whatever it is. And these are always lists that half the time, oh, all 4 of these names aren't available. We got to find another. And I got others, but I just trim it down to 3 or 4 max usually so that it doesn't feel like a production company roster of
Right.
name on one slide. It kind of curates it down. And then if they're like, oh, we really love like my friend Zoe or Kai or whatever, then we can go into it. But part of it's also damage control. There's so many really talented people that are really unpleasant to work with, and I've been really lucky that I've been able to work with super talented people that are very pleasant to work with and be around. And I can totally vouch for their personalities and qualities around clients and as their demeanor and all just general pleasantness. I can vouch for every name I put in my treatments. It's kind of a cosign on character too. I rarely put someone in a treatment that I haven't met or at least heard great things about.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome. Are you looking for opportunities to incorporate the brand into the treatment as well? Do you find that useful?
Yeah, I think, with music videos and commercials, you're always trying to incorporate the artist or the brand, whatever it is. There's moments where it's important to show a logo, like, it works here. This is a pull from another spot I did for them. But sometimes it's funny, like, if you're pitching a car commercial, half the cars in your treatment are not the brand's cars. Your opening page should probably be, oh, I'm pitching on a Nissan ad. And the opening page should probably be a Nissan, but you're going to have some Mercedes in there when it fits the tone and the vibe of what you're doing way more than something you could find in a Nissan ad. And that's just the challenge of doing a thing. And agencies that's their job to kind of communicate that to a client. I think people can just understand like, oh, why is someone else's car in my treatment is not really a question I ever get. They understand why. If anything, I think it's exciting because if you can't find work in that world that brand has done yet, then that brand's doing something new, and they're excited about, oh, this is the direction we're going with things, and we want it to feel this way now, and whatever it is. So, you put I try to incorporate brand as much as possible as long as it fits the vision and the distinctness, and I'm not just logo stickering it for no reason, but if there is another brand or a competing brand in here, I'm not scared of that. Like, we can all use our common sense to understand that this is in here for these reasons.
Yeah. It looks like you did a little location scouting and you got pretty specific about exactly where you'd like to shoot.
Let me see this. Let me zoom in on this. It's been so long since I've reviewed this. Oh yeah. No, we found some cool stuff. That's what I I do this on some jobs. I just did this on another job. When it merely makes sense, you do a preliminary location scout, you pull some stuff. I don't even think we shot at any of these places. But something that's cool is for us to go through it and show them that, hey, here's these like possibilities. Here's this like, you can imagine it here now. You can start to see it. Look at these cool locations, because you're also selling, we want to shoot this in Toronto. I shoot in Toronto a lot. The crews are so great and the money goes a lot further than shooting in LA. And it's awesome. So you're kind of trying to sell that through as well. It's kind of just to get people excited, the little detail to put in there.
Yeah. You're giving them, you're painting a fantasy world that you're going to create, but you're giving them real world locations that they might be able to associate to put themselves into the fantasy world.
Totally.
Again, you mentioned music and the importance of it. You made a Spotify playlist for this.
Yeah.
For this, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, and even if that, so I have a composer friend who's like really close friend of mine. This guy Gavin Brivik, he's amazing. I think he's just so gifted. But he scores all of the stuff that I actually am able to bring him on, and he scored this, and he did such a wonderful job. And he has such range, like he has such incredible range as an artist. And the Spotify playlist is something that gets put in here with like setting a tone. Sometimes the brand will license something from it, but it's kind of the first olive branch I put forward to the agency creatives to have them also collaborate on the playlist and add songs. And then, for example, by the time we got to this set, all of our like dance scenes and different stuff was from the playlist. Like we just played the actual playlist that we had been building and prep. So, especially with studio shoots, that playlist comes in handy when you're doing work that it's okay to play music during,
Yeah.
Set
That's
a vibe.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, overall, how do you feel about the treatment? What do you think made it so winnable?
I think there's an inherent advantage to being an incumbent. I think the fact that I'd done a spot with them before, there was a level of trust that I think made it winnable. But I think that, I don't know. I love this treatment. It's been a while since I've looked at it. It's like you do the pitch and then you get into the work of it and you forget about the pitch and because you're doing it. But I have spreadsheets of all my pitches and color coded on whether we win or we lose. And some of my favorite treatments I've ever made have been things I didn't win because I was against someone who's been doing it for 20 years longer than me, or we were the reco, but client went another way, or it just died. The old job so like there's a million reasons why you can lose a job. And I just make sure that one of those reasons isn't that we had a bad treatment.
You love it. You talk about how much you enjoy the pitching process, but is there a part of the process that you think could be different, or is it so great?
Yeah, so many. I think anything that you love will always have room for improvement because you're so close to it, right? So I think something that's important is, I spend a lot of time on this and then you do win the job and it's great, but the production company spends a lot of money on it. And it'd be nice if we could find a way, whether it's, the DGA setting some standards for it or whatever, but it'd be really nice to get paid to pitch and not paid by the production companies, but by the agencies. If the agency is trying to make $1 million spot and they want some top tier directors and they have 3 people pitching on it, then the 2 that lose the job should get some stipend to cover the, week and a half of work that they did. Just a tiny percentage of the overall budget to get the quality of competition in the room, because something that also comes with competition is everyone's trying to beat the other person's numbers as well and do it for cheaper and provide the best deal. So I think it would just be a little more ethical if we got, not a crazy amount, but if we got like, a reasonable amount for how much time we put in on these pitches. And I think it could totally be something that scales with the size of the budget of the job. Like there's, if you're doing a $2 million campaign, you should probably catch a paycheck for even being in that room. But if you're doing pitching on a $200,000 spot where most of the money needs to end up on screen, then it's probably just like a little tiny thank you, at the end of it. But I do think it'd be nice if the 2 people that didn't win the job got a little bit. I don't know how we make that happen though. I think it's got to be a DGA thing. I think it's got to be like the union basically says, if you want DGA directors to pitch on your project, then you have to follow this rule of X amount of percentage goes to production company. And because really it's like I put my time into it for free. But the production company puts money into it. I've done treatments that cost like over 10 grand.
Yeah, who's paying for the designers to put
the production company? Production company. And I've done treatments where I want to do CG tests, and I'll do CG tests on like full things on like there was this pitch that died. We needed to show like a coffee cup being filled with coffee from like this machine and that we build. And I built this whole 3D block of stuff where it showed the different mechanisms, how it would fill and how it would drain. I've done that with so many projects, like there was an Intel project where I designed all the 3D of the chips before the pitch and stuff like that. And, production companies can go out of pocket thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for a pitch. It'd be nice if it was compensated just a little bit. I think the most frustrating parts are when nobody wins the job. There's plenty of jobs that just die for one reason or another. And I think in those, everyone should just be able to submit an invoice for reimbursement because that's a waste of time. But honestly, I just feel lucky and grateful to be in these rooms and to be competing for this work. It's just small things that I think there's room for improvement on for kind of the ethics of it. But we live a very privileged, lucky, we get to do what we like to do and make money doing that. And so if I need to lose 10 jobs to win one, okay, that's the cost.
Yeah. I want to talk about representation because there's the things that allow us to do what we do and to have that privilege. And oftentimes there are other people, it's on set, it's crew, and offset, sometimes it's representation, right? And I think most directors who are repped by agencies or some type of management have worked hard without it. Can you give me an example of how having representation has aided you?
Oh, I mean, in all the ways. Like when I started, I was only doing jobs that felt very, very me because I had no representation. And it was good, but they were small scale and I was working a lot less frequently. And then when I got signed and I had reps, the reps, if you have a connection with them and if you keep up on it, and I know people that will sit on company websites with no work for a year, and it's like, okay, well, you might as well be a ghost. You need people in your corner that are really pushing for you. And I'm really lucky that my EPs and my reps really push for me, and they really push to get me in those rooms. And they represent a lot of people, but I feel like I get a great amount of attention. I'm also very active myself and checking in with them and seeing what I can do. But it's huge. They have deep networks of long-standing relationships and a lot of trust built up. And especially when you're a new, younger director, it takes someone like that kind of kicking in the door and being like, trust me, you're going to love this guy. And that's what they do that a lot. And then, it shows up because I do a lot of repeat work too. People come back and that's, it's hopefully a long career. And the reps are an enormous part of it. It can totally determine the type of work you see. I always tell people when they're looking to sign to a production company, go have long phone calls with the reps first. Talk to the reps first, before you sign. Go make sure you feel like you have a connection with them. Go make sure that they feel like they can sell you. Go make sure that the vision they have for your future and how they want to sell your work aligns with something that excites you and where you want to be going. All that's super important because those are the ones connecting the dots most of the time. Sometimes stuff comes in directly to me, sometimes, but I would say that 99% of my work comes in through the reps now.
I mean, that was going to be my next question is what advice do you have to a filmmaker or a director who's got good work, but isn't repped and wants to be?
It's tough because I feel like everyone has their own path here. And I know some people who have gone to production companies and knocked on doors and it's worked out. And I've known people who get reached out to and it's worked out. But my thing is, don't go, what's the saying? It's don't go where you're tolerated, go where you're celebrated. You got to find people that really connect with you and your work and people that excite you. I really believe that you shouldn't always work with your friends, but you shouldn't work with people that couldn't be your friends, and I think at least for me, community and feeling connected to people and being able to be honest with people and being able to, because production's hard. You can get into some really deep places of friction with people. And if you're not you don't know that there's this mutual respect, it can be really tricky. And so, you got to be with people who are ready to kind of do a very hard job with you and ride through that. It's way more than just having a nice dinner with a producer and being we'll sign. You gotta, I like the idea of dating before you marry a little bit. If you can do one job together and then see that's cool. Sometimes that's not possible because the reps can't support someone off roster, and that makes sense too. But if you have the opportunity to do that, should do that. But yeah, I think the only advice is follow your gut. Like, and again, I think it's one of those things where you could have a great production company and a great director, but they might not be a great fit together. And so, just know that this industry is small and people move around, and the EP that was at the company that wanted you might end up being the EP at the company that you're signed to like a few years later, and just try not to burn bridges. And I've noticed in my I was really worried about this when I was first starting because I didn't want to burn any bridges. And I didn't, you start getting offers from places and you're like, man, I want to sign at all these places. They're all so cool and great. And you want to see how it goes. But eventually you got to make a commitment. And it's really, it's been really like illuminating to see how just graceful everyone was when you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to take this choice over here as opposed to this one right here. The people that are really graceful kind of show you that it's like that's sort of like wishing you well and best of luck. It's like, it just shows you, one, how small the industry is and how like there isn't really room to burn bridges, but also that there's just like a lot of good options and a lot of good people. If someone responds in a negative way, then they're kind of telling you that you made the right choice, like by not signing with them. So you just don't really have to worry about it. How other people react is their responsibility, not yours, when you're going through this kind of process of figuring out where to sign. But I've had enormously good experiences with any production company I've talked to, and there's no blueprint though. Like you just gotta
right.
Yeah.
What do you think it's like? The goal is to be signed to an exclusive roster? Like, what do you think about directors being like signed to other rosters that aren't exclusive? Like, what is the goal in terms of representation?
And the goal for me, and I think hopefully for most directors, is to work on stuff that pays your bills and fulfills you creatively, and be working consistently, to be sharpening those tools and to be doing it frequently. Like, those are my things. And if you are in a non-exclusive, it's like, I don't know, like if you're in a non-exclusive agreement and you're checking those boxes and you're satisfied and fulfilled, then great, that's great for you. If you're in an exclusive agreement like me, like I'm exclusive in the US and Canada, it's great because I also am developing a feature with the production company. There's things that are long term and there's strategy and vision building that aren't I think as accessible, and something that is non-exclusive. But I'm also I have an agent for like the global markets, but I'm not on rosters globally. I work with production companies abroad, but I'm not signed exclusively anywhere there because my agent pulls jobs and connects me with companies, and just a different market. It's like the business works a little different. I think it's more beneficial in America to be exclusive. But yeah, it's case by case, man.
Yeah, totally. What are you wanting to do in your career that you haven't done yet? What's next for Jackson?
There's a few things that have been really interesting me lately. Like, I really want to make a movie. I'm writing a film, deep into writing this movie with a co-writer. I would love to make a film in the next, 3 to 5 years would be great. I also have interests I want the commercial work I do to start feeling more narrative. Like just start tapping into, there's a real story here. It's a bit more grounded. It's a bit more rooted in this. And then like to see the intersection of where I came from with like really actor-based or human-based or, storytelling, mix with the years of technical practice that I have now and how to serve that. And I've noticed it when I'm writing the film or a short film or whatever it is, where I might be doing something that's technical craft with the camera, but I could write you paragraphs as to why that's happening and what it symbolizes and what it does. And so that's kind of I want to just see those two sides really like start to intersect on the work that I start doing moving forward, whether it's a music video or commercial, or, it'd be cool to play in other formats too. Like it'd be cool to do like an immersive experience, or it'd be cool to design I just love working with production designers so much. It'd be cool to one day do like a live activation of something and creative direct that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you ever consider doing something that has nothing to do with film?
Oh, always. I need it. Yeah, I mean, I've started to oil paint a little bit, do stuff like that. I need things there are some things that I need to be able to do without having to ask permission to do them. And film used to be that for me. And then it became my career and it totally absorbed my life in the best way. But I'm realizing now that, I should start taking still photography again. I should start painting again. Like I should start doing these things because it's really good to have an outlet that's no consequence. There's no mistakes. There's no stakeholders. There's no pitch. You just sit down and you go, and I need some sort of flow with that. So I've been playing with that.
You talk about different mediums, oil painting, photography, film. There's a new medium in town and it's AI. What are your thoughts on that?
Did you see that? I wrote like a petition on this. I don't know if you
No, I
saw
didn't
it.
see it. No, I didn't.
And it's like a change.org petition. It got thousands of signatures from like a lot of really prominent people um, in our industry.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean, I went down the fear rabbit hole with it. Like, when I think that's with most people when they saw Sora come out. But the more I've learned about it, the less afraid I've become, because I think it has serious limitations. Like just because, I mean, I could be totally proven wrong here, but I've been reading and there's a lot of papers on the idea that this is going to probably plateau or start digesting itself if they don't figure out a new way to innovate. The idea of pump more data in makes machine better is at its zenith. I think we've hit that point, or maybe we haven't yet. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe it is uncharted territory. But a lot of the theories say that best case scenario this plateaus. Outside of that, there is an enormous amount of lawsuits like around this right now, and just how it. People are like, oh, it learns how a human does. Like, it's like, yeah, but it's not a human and it should not have the same rights as a human. It's just a massive theft machine. But, I've seen it used in pitch decks and stuff like that. And I'm actually super cool with that. I think it's cool as like a look development, like, research tool, like try to figure out if something's visually striking or working, like to kind of play around in it is fine. But I think anything made in these programs, if it's not properly licensed, should just be immediately public domain. It should not be something that can be in a commercial for profit. It should not be something that, it's like it should just be owned by the public if that's what if it's a giant brain made by the public, anything that it spits out should be owned by the public unless it's done off of a data set where it's like, hey, every filmmaker that this trained on is getting paid a little bit, and now you can put it out in your commercial in the same way where you would license a shot from Film Supply or whatever. Like, I just think that we went from like, oh, you got to spend all this money to license a clip to suddenly that clip is made by 100,000 clips and you don't have to pay any of them. It's weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some cool stuff in there, but I think a lot of it's, let's see if it's hype or not. But I think a lot of it might be just like how like data science was hype. It's like so much of like the stuff we were talking about with like people were so excited about like data science. It's like, how predictive is it? Really, the most accurate thing that it was doing was showing us the past, but like stuff would still happen, like new trends would happen that were totally unpredictable with this. It's I think this is the new trend. I think this is obviously the new thing, but I don't know how much you've played around in it, but for someone that wants to really control their output and has clients that give the most detailed notes, you can't really control it.
I use it to make me smarter. Like, I barely graduated high school and have terrible grammar and don't know how to form adult sentences. You know what I mean?
No,
It helps me in that way.
but some of it's really cool. Like, I don't know, it's kind of cool to like reason and ideate with this chatbot, basically is what it is. It's like this super just search engine chatbot like ChatGPT is really engaging and you can get something good out of it. It will never write a script I'm happy with, or maybe I'm bad at prompting, but if I'm asking it questions, that's where I get some interesting feedback. And it's about kind of how they're tools and they're how you use them. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a new thing that the ethics just need to be ironed out.
Okay, wrapping up here, we all learn lessons in the process and along the way. Is there one that stands out to you?
Some of the big ones that I think I tapped in on is like, make sure you pick people that you can actually connect with to be on your team and to be a part of it. I think also maybe separating yourself a little bit from like end result and learning that like we're not saving lives, but there's so much fun to be had if you're not white knuckling it and like over controlling it. I think the thing that's coming to me is like, and I'm still really working on this, is learning which battles to fight. Because like you're not going to win all of them. You're
Impossible.
Yeah, no, I feel like trying to deter, and that comes with having a good team, is like, and learning to trust that team. Like there's a lot of moments where I'm like, I don't know, should I be doing this? Should I be pushing on this? But I have an EP that will mentor me through that process and give me the best advice on how to navigate that. So all these things kind of tied together, but yeah, you just gotta put yourself in a position to stay passionate with it. Like if you're feeling really burnt out, chances are you need to look at all the different variables around you as to why that might be the case. And I think we all experience burnout, whether it's from working too little or working too much, or working with the wrong people, or working on bad creative with the right people, or working on good creative with the wrong people. Like it's just, there's so many variables in all of this.
Dude,
So
that's so funny what you just said. They're working too little. I think a lot of people associate burnout with working too much. But what do you mean by that, working too little? Because it actually resonates with me.
you know, if you're like me and you're like addicted to this work, and you know, real life advice is like get a therapist and friends that can like, you know, work like professional coaches or anything like that, because it's so much about your mental fortitude, because there's moments where you're overbooked and overbusy, and then there's moments where it's just, oh, it's slow right now, and you're like, okay, well, what do I do with my time? Like that's why I was like, let me find some hobbies, let me start painting, let me do something, let me start writing a feature to fill that time, and so then I can feel productive in that moment. But it's like when you're overworked, you're really like, I can't wait for a day off, and then suddenly no one's calling you, and you're like, wait, what? Where'd it go? And I think no matter who you are in this industry, there's peaks and valleys with how busy it can be as a director. Just managing the downtime, because just because I'm not working doesn't mean I'm not thinking about working, you know, like, and it's like fully occupying my mental, and that is exhausting. It can lead to burnout, you know. So finding peace in your in between is I'm definitely not the person to talk on it, because I still struggle with it, trying to find it. But it's that's the key, I think, to sustainability.
I end the podcast with the same question every time. And it's, what question haven't I asked you? What do I not know how to ask you?
I don't know. You asked a lot of great questions.
Well, the ball's in your court here. Anything on your heart?
You know, I feel like there's this, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I feel like I've been experimenting with getting rid of Instagram on my phone and just using it on my laptop. And I go through phases with it, because I think social media is so addictive, and I struggle with that. But I think that there's sometimes diminishing returns from, at least for me, from seeing too much of other people's work. Like it's not even like comparison or anything. It's just like can be so inundating and overwhelming to see so much of it. And I think a lot of original ideas and creativity come from maybe like moments of that, but then moments of reprieve and being away from it, and being on vacation and just reading one book, or going to the movies twice a week. And the rest of it is like you're reading and you're, you know, spending time outside and doing that stuff. But like for me, I feel like it can become very high pressure to like be up on what's latest and don't want to miss something. I don't want to be aware of what's going on in the industry and all of that. And I think that's important. And like, you can't, like totally neglect that, but I don't think it's as important as everyone makes it out to be. I think like honestly, time away allows you to then put your contribution on the table. And that's something I'm curious how you feel about it, but it's, I deleted Instagram initially because I was just like, man, I'm wasting so much time on this. And then I come back to it on my laptop and I'm like using it as like a tool. And it's like, I go to the messages, like it's LinkedIn, it's good. Or I go to my saved folders and that helps me with visual, like finding references for treatment designers or whatever. Like it's very useful. But it can become all consuming. And so trying to find that balance is hard.
Yeah, like I don't know if I can trust myself to only use it at the toll that I know that it is for me, because it's such a great resource. But like, I don't have the self-control to only use it for that. You know what I mean? If I delete it off my phone, I'm going to go to the browser, check my DMs, business done. And then I'm going to see who tagged me in something, or I'm going to go, next thing I know, I'm surfing, I'm looking at stuff I don't even want to look at.
Yeah, exactly. I find myself doing less of that on a laptop though than on a phone.
Definitely less.
I re-downloaded and deleted it, but I went recently like 2+ weeks without it, and it was just it's amazing. It's amazing. Like it's amazing. Like there's nothing that I can say that expresses how great it was. You should just do it, and you can always re-download it. But there's a certain humility in acknowledging, like we all like to think that given any situation where placed in, we're going to navigate it in the way that's the most intelligent and logical. Like, but like there's a humility in acknowledging that, like, I am not, like, it doesn't matter how much fortitude you have. If like someone puts this drug in your system, you're going to get addicted to it. It doesn't matter how, much you resist it or whatever it is. And I feel like understanding how powerful these tools aimed at our brains are is like, it doesn't take away from your ability to control yourself, but you can control your access to it, and you can control your relationship to it. And that's something that I'm not great at, but really trying to figure out what works for me and how to do that. Because I feel like sometimes I love wasting time on it, and sometimes I waste time on it and I feel so bad that I wasted time on it, and it's kind of trippy.
Well, Jackson, thanks so much. This has been one hell of a conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. This was great.
Hey everyone, Dylan here. Look, I'm a little shocked, honestly, by how well this podcast is doing. And we'd like to make a lot of episodes soon. So, like this video, subscribe to the channel. It'll help us make more. Thank you.